Hi, everyone. You have 1/3 of the Not So Grand Jury here, Derrick, to introduce a brief sidebar in preparation for this Thursday's release of our next episode, where we discuss the 2016 Marvel movie Captain America Civil War. First, a reminder to send us feedback. Any feedback. We are very curious what you think of the episodes. We are very curious if you have thoughts on some of our legal conversations or thoughts on just how we're doing. We love to hear from you, and we're happy to respond to anything. You can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or interact with us on our social media pages, including on LinkedIn, Instagram, and maybe even Blue Sky if Jeff remembers to occasionally go on Blue Sky. Second, and much more importantly, the main purpose of this sidebar is to introduce our guest for this Thursday's episode, Wes Rist, a friend of the podcast and, well, direct friend of both myself and Jeff. Wes is an international human rights lawyer who has specialized in atrocity prevention, which makes him very well suited to talk about Captain America Civil War, in addition to the fact that he is a Marvel nerd, as apparently is both Jeff and Mike. Myself, not so much. Still a fun movie to talk about, though. As we've done in the past, we wanted to give you a brief primer prior to Thursday's episode when we have a guest on, especially since this episode delves heavily into international law, something that you all may not necessarily know in depth or at all, and also to present a clip that had to be cut from the episode due to length. So, this first clip is actually me giving an overview of international law back from our 17th episode on Law and Order SVU, Season 9, Episode 5, Harm, an overview that Wes himself endorsed as being, quote, not bad. So basically, I'm going to talk about what is called public international law. Public international law is sort of the set of norms that is aimed at regulating the interaction between, I'll just call them subjects of international law, but in other words, foreign states, nations, things along that nature. And I say it's a set of norms rather than sort of like a body of law or a set of statutes, because there are no necessarily statutes or regulation in international law. There is no Congress for the world. There is no way to create a regulation. International law is basically a way to create a framework which, sort of contributes to this stable, organized, consistent international relations, which, by the way, is not a thing. There's no way that it's stable, organized, or anything. But there are sort of sources of international law that help us get to what public international law is. So the main sources are treaties, customary international law, and general principles of law. Treaties, those are straightforward. Those are formal agreements between what I'll call foreign states. I don't want to confuse the viewer when I say states, because a lot of our listeners are U.S. residents. When they think of states, they think of the 50 states of the United States. When I mean foreign states, I mean nations and other sort of nations, countries, foreign. And there's a lot. There you go. Foreign sovereigns. That's a good way of describing it, because there's not necessarily countries, not necessarily nations. Some people do not recognize other foreign sovereigns, but here we are. So treaties are the straightforward one, and that's in fact what the Geneva Conventions are referring to, and I'll get to that in a second. The second source is customary international law, which are international obligations that have arisen from the practices of foreign sovereigns. There must be general and consistent practice by the foreign sovereign, as well as a sense of legal obligation, which is known by the shortened Latin phrase opinio juris. A good example of this is granting immunity to visiting heads of state or sort of government heads. There is, in fact, no treaty that codifies that foreign ministers are shielded from prosecution in a foreign country when they travel there in their official capacity. This is just something that has arisen out of customary international law, and it is, there are exceptions, but for the most part, when you travel in your official capacity, you are shielded from prosecution in a foreign country. And then there's these general principles of law, which is the third source, which are just universally recognized rules and concepts that are foundational to legal systems worldwide. Principles like good faith, where you are trying to act honestly and fairly. Res judicata, which basically means if a court has decided a case on the same subject matter between the same parties, they can't then take it again and try them again. And impartiality of judges, where theoretically judges should not be biased against one party. These are general principles of law that a vast majority of foreign sovereigns, have as part of their legal system. And there are also subsidiary means for determining the rule of law in international law, such as judicial decisions of each of the individual foreign sovereigns and teaching of highly qualified publicists. This second clip is a chat that the three of us had with Wes regarding what kind of legal duty superheroes would have if they existed in real life. If that sounds pretty nerdy to you, well, just you wait till the actual episode. It may not sound as nerdy afterwards.
He's admitted liability, obviously not in a court setting or anything, but he's admitted liability for being a bad actor in whatever the standard duty of care for a superhero is. So, yeah, like Lagos.
Oh, superhero duty of care.
Yeah, exactly. Superhero duty of care. I bet there are lawyers at Stark Industries that are just trying to figure all of that. Like, that must be an amazing general counsel's office to work for.
Oh, it's got to be huge. I mean, here comes an interesting, like, we could drop this somewhere else or cut it for all the hell I care. The concept of superheroes having a duty to either rescue or a duty, or just general negligence. What does that mean in the context of a superhero? Because in real life, there is no duty to rescue because none of us we're all putting ourselves in more peril. By like effectively, that's how it all became, right? Yeah. Is that like the duty of rescue doesn't exist to my knowledge, almost anywhere, certainly not in the United States. It's because you don't want someone who is not a professional putting themselves in possibly even more danger or subjecting whoever's in the peril to possibly be, even in more peril. Like you're putting the whole situation into a problematic state.
Even law enforcement
right.
isn't under affirmative duty to act.
Correct. So it's interesting that would, I'm guessing, if there were superheroes in real life, does that change the calculus?
Oh, I think it does. I think it would. The problem is the competing interest is also, like, you haven't seen this movie, Derrick, but Thunderbolts has a mentally ill superhero who is canonically, who is the most powerful superhero in the Marvel universe in the century. And the problem is, do you want that guy being the guy out there with a responsibility to act?
Last but not least, this is a great clip from Wes regarding the importance of discussing international law-related issues and how international law lawyers may have failed us in this regard up to date. I think it is a very important sort of minute and a half that explains why it is important to be talking about some of these issues that seem really sort of not applicable to your day-to-day life, but in fact could be.
I think, Jeff, you actually raise an important point, which is that, this conversation felt shortchanged from a legal perspective. And I think that's actually a failing of international lawyers to actually convey to the general public why this shit actually matters. And we talked about this recently as to the complete decimation of our foreign assistance funding in the United States with the closure of the USAID and the firing of a large number of State Department employees, because we have not done a good job of conveying to the American people why this stuff matters, why it actually affects their daily lives, even though they don't see it. And certainly it's not going to be covered by the day-to-day news. But, getting on my soapbox, like, mass atrocities occurring around the world have a direct impact on, middle American ethics and issues, but also their economics and their safety and their day-to-day experience of life. They just don't see it because the consequences are like 3 steps removed. And I think this is actually a failure of lawyers, and specifically international lawyers, to make the case that what happens in this arena actually does have an impact on your life day to day.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwa P. LLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves, and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2025, all rights reserved.